let's go back to the beginning of UFC. When you first got into it, your first fight was, what, 1997? I think it was UFC 13.
That's right.
You obviously got into it because you wanted to make money. You had the wrestling background as an alternate, a couple of times at least, right, with the Olympic team?
4 times,
yeah.
2 times that I was the #1 guy going into the trials and managed to come up second.
Yeah.
So,
which is interesting, because I don't think people make the connection when they watch the Olympics, especially when you get there. That's it. You have that one shot, and obviously during the trials as well. And going back, the athletes can look back and go, "Man, I just didn't come up big that time, and it changed my whole life."
I was on 4 other world teams, which is basically the same process in a non-Olympic year. Made the world team, went and represented the United States at the World Championships, but in the Olympic year, for whatever reason, I didn't have a good trials, or I just I didn't peak at the right time, or whatever the case was. You don't get another chance for 4 more years. It's a long time.
Yeah. So when someone pitched UFC to you,
well, nobody really pitched it to me. Back then, you filled out an application. And,
really?
I had a friend that was kind of poking fun at me and saying, "Oh, yeah, you see Fry, you see Coleman, you should try that." And I had to get the application, and we'll send in a tape of you wrestling, and you'll get in. And it's like, I didn't really know what to think of it. And I was like, all right, well, that'll be interesting. And then they kind of said, put me off. They said, oh, we have enough wrestlers. We'll put you on the alternate list.
Yeah.
And then, like 6 months later, they're calling me up saying, hey, we got the spot in the tournament. You're on the alternate list. We can't find anybody to fill the spot. Do you still want to fight? I'm like, all right.
How far out from the fight is this?
2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
And I mean, at this point, is there really anything such as MMA, that the whole term?
No, not really. I think guys at that point were still representing their individual styles.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I'll go. I'm a wrestler. I'll go. I'm in shape. I'm just getting ready to go to the Pan Am Championships in Puerto Rico. I'll go take these guys down. No, why not?
Right.
And so I rolled in there 2 weeks later in my first UFC, all wide-eyed, going, "Oh my God, what did I get myself into?" And facing a 300-pound Finnish guy and a 290-pound football player. Going,
right.
This is insane. And
did you? I was reading looking back on the record. You had a TKO in the first fight and a submission in the second.
Other way around.
Okay.
Submission in 50 seconds in the first one against Tony Alma.
How'd you know how to do a submission?
Well, I had 5 days basically to figure out what the guard was, and I think all wrestlers naturally know how to choke somebody.
Right.
It's not allowed in wrestling, but we all kind of know how to apply those sorts of things. So I ended up on this guy's back and put a rear naked choke on him.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but I just grabbed hold of him and choked him. And then the second fight was against Stephen Graham, who was the big athletic football player, and I ended up taking his back too, but just hitting him until John stopped the fight.
Yeah, of course, that's Big John, who now, like you, is an outlaw. We'll get into your outlaw status. It's weird how this has developed with Randy Couture. I was looking at the event, and it is kind of funny when because I think Vitor Belfort was on there. I think Metzger was on there. Tito Ortiz was on there. Things have changed. There's no doubt about it. Your current situation. I mean, every week someone's interviewing you, asking about the contract situation. I saw people run last week on the blogs with, "Hey, it's going to be resolved this week." I mean,
I hear that every week, and that's been going on for quite a while. And it's not going to be resolved this week, but it will be resolved sooner or later. And the term of the contract expired on the 19th of July. The fight contract.
Right.
So we're kind of in this 30-day period where written in the contract there's like good faith negotiations going on right now, supposedly. And really the only negotiation is can the UFC find a way to sign Fedor and make the Fedor fight happen.
Right.
I've made it clear that at this stage of my career that's the only fight that really makes a lot of sense to me. Not that I have anything against Nogueira, who's the UFC's champion now. I think he's a great fighter, but he's lost to Fedor twice.
Mm-hmm.
And at 45, I want to fight the top guy and be considered the top guy. So I think the fans understand that. They want to see that fight. We're still waiting on a declaration to kind of determine our differences in opinion about the language in the contract. It's pretty clear. It says 18 months or 4 fights. Terms expired. So, as we see it, we're free and clear from the fight contract. Non-compete clause for my former employment contract expires on the 10th of October. I resign on the 11th. It goes for a year. So at that time, I'll be able to start commentating, getting involved with other promotions and all those sorts of things if I want to.
But if there's no resolution in court, I mean, you could be facing another year from October of not actually fighting.
I think that's their goal at this point. They don't want to see me fight Fedor or anywhere else, and they have been unable to sign him. And so they're hoping to drag this out as long as they can, make me spend money on lawyers and all that sort of thing. And, I just still think sooner or later it's going to be resolved, and we'll work it out.
That's Randy Couture. He's got a book signing tonight, 7 o'clock, Barnes & Noble, Charleston and Fort Apache. The book is Becoming the Natural. So we talked about the first UFC you were in, and we're mentioning all those names, and it looks like Tito Ortiz is going to sign with Affliction here. We ran a report, I don't know, like 3 days ago that he might be on the October 11th card that's at the Thomas & Mack. So do you ever sit back and go, it's kind of sad that things have come to this? I mean, or do you just go, hey, business is business? I mean, do you harken back and go, we probably, both of us should have had, and a lot of the UFC guys should have had jobs for life, and this is kind of a lousy way to end the relationship?
Well, and I don't know that we've ended the relationship. I don't have any personal hard feelings, and I feel both things. It's disappointing, and when I hear Dana's made some crack on the radio about me or something again, it's disappointing that that's the way it is. But at the same time, it is business. I mean, I've got to do what's best for me in my career, and I've whether the UFC's liked it or not, spent 11 years with their help building a brand that stands by itself now. And the gyms are doing well, the clothing line's doing well, the book, getting a chance to do some acting, all those things are things that I'm very interested in that are doing good for me, and I'm trying to instill that in the guys that I work with. Look, this is your livelihood. All these ancillary streams of form your own company. You are building your own brand here. Now, whether or not it takes off is a whole different thing, but
right.
You need to look at this as a business, because you're only going to be able to actually get in that ring and compete for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
You need to capitalize on what you build right now and how you, as an athlete, perform, because that's what's going to carry you down the road.
And you've pointed out that's your biggest issue. Isn't it really not the basic money of the contract, it's the self-control?
Well, they've tried to make me out to be this greedy athlete that just wants more money, and we all want to be paid more. I mean, who doesn't? What's Brett Favre's issue right now? There's a salary cap and all this other stuff going on. I mean, every professional athlete in the country, in the world, I mean, again, we only get to compete for so long, and I think we as mixed martial artists are, with the popularity of this sport, are severely underpaid. And I'm not complaining, because I've made more money than I've ever made in my life in this sport.
I was going to say, back in '97, could you ever imagine this whole...
standing up whining, I want more money.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, it's frustrating for me to see Floyd Mayweather get $30, $40 million for basically, in essence, doing the same job that I'm doing. And if we're kicking the stuffing out of boxing, then how is that possible?
Right.
Because the reality is, we're not kicking the stuffing out of boxing. We're using a completely different model to promote the two sports, and some of that comes out of the history of our sport. We've kind of been this stepchild in combative sports for a long time, and had to change everybody's perception about us. And so therefore, the company has to have 100 employees. They have to market a lot of their stuff themselves. They have to go and get commissions to sanction the events. They have to pay site fees and things that boxing doesn't have to do. Those are realities. Therefore, the company has to spend more money and do those. They feel like they're entitled to keep the lion's share of the money. Well, I think the problem with that is that they're opening the door for guys with the landscape change now that are going to come along, skin it down, use a much leaner group, pay the fighters better, do some other things for the fighters that are going to attract the fighters, because ultimately they just want to be paid better and take it to the next level.